Hi, and welcome to the Parenting Playbook podcast. Today, I've got Miryka with me, who has created the Step and Blended Family Society. So, today we're going to be talking about blended families, and crikey, Miryka knows all about those. Not only does she work in that field, but also she has 8 children, some stepchildren, some biological children, some together children. She's got an incredible story. So today we're going to be focusing on blended families and the challenges that us as step parents have, and when we're bringing two people together who have children with different ex-partners. So welcome, Miryka. I'm so glad that you're here to have this conversation. I
Thanks
love
for having me.
being a biological mum and a stepmom myself. I'm down for this.
Yes, well versed. I love it.
I'm down for this. Yes. So tell me a little bit about you and the work that you do.
So I have been helping stepmoms now for 6 years. Actually, it was my sixth anniversary a couple of weeks ago. I was really happy with that.
Congratulations.
And I've been helping bio moms for about 18 months now. I became a stepmom 8 years ago and had children myself, thought it'd be a breeze, love kids, worked with children for years. How hard can it be? Well, famous last words, let me tell you. The first year was not too bad. The second year, I just wanted to run. I spent the year feeling alone, feeling like, why does nobody else understand this? How can anybody else be in a blended family? I was just broken. It broke my relationship. It broke my relationship with the children. And whenever I went online for some support, it was majority America and Australia, Canada. They have such different lifestyles to us. They have such different laws to us. And it just didn't feel like my community. It didn't ring true with what I was living. And so I created my own safe space for UK stepmoms with a friend of mine. We were just helping people troubleshoot, listening to their problems, giving them a safe space, helping them with the laws in this country. I did stacks and stacks of research. I'd been through court as a bio mom. Then I went through court as a stepmom. I was a Mackenzie Friends for a friend of mine who went through court. So I was pretty well versed in how that was going to work. And then I started my coaching business 2 years ago. I did a life coaching course, some other diplomas. Just if I could grab it and learn it, I would. And now I help stepmoms and bio moms just try and find the calm in their chaos. I think that's the best way to describe it.
Absolutely. Can you break it down for me, how your family dynamics and how which children are where?
So my partner had 4 children with his ex-wife. He has a 22-year-old girl, and then he has 3 boys. So they are now 20, 18, and one will be 17 in 2 months. So those are his children. Then I came to the floor with 2 children of my own, 2 girls from 2 previous relationships. They are now 13 and 8. And then we have 2 together who are 4 and 2 today.
Oh, very lovely. S- Tell me about the challenges, because it's a lived experience for you. The work that you do in coaching has largely stemmed from your experiences of being a blended family, by the sounds of it, and the challenges you faced, and the very fact that there wasn't anything available to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. S- Tell me a bit about your experience of being a blended family and a stepmom. We were talking earlier, weren't we, about how stepmoms get a really bad gig with the whole Cinderella piece. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
how
Disney did us wrong.
I can't recall ever, there ever being anything in the media or films that shows stepmom being the lovely one. It's always the wicked
There are a
stepmom,
few,
isn't
but
it?
they're not as popular as Disney. That's the
No,
problem. Disney did us wrong so bad several times.
absolutely. But as you will know, and as I know, as a stepmom myself, it's you just go into being a blended family thinking, well, I've got this. When I went into a blended family, I had a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. I've been a parent for ages. Can't be that hard, surely. I mean, surely it's got to be easier when you've when they're not your biological children. And cracky. I find being a stepmom far harder than being a biological mum. Tell me a bit about your experience.
Yeah, so the first year didn't feel too bad. We all seemed to get on. We did a couple of days out as a family. We did a couple of days out, just me and the kids. And it felt like, yes, I like these children. They're lovely. I can do this. And then loyalty bonds took over. And the second year, actually just our first Christmas, was really, it was really tough. And looking back, it was tough on the children, which made it tough on us. But at the time, you feel like the world is against you, like I'm rescheduling my life for children that aren't mine. There's so many different schedules that you just don't have control over. I'm so used to just, oh, I've got 2 children, it's Christmas Day, let's do Christmas. Now I've got 4 other children to consider, shopping for. Where does the money come from? And it's I think we went into it having not had those big discussions of what life was gonna look like together, and I do regret that now because every time we hit a bump, there was, "Why didn't we have that conversation when we said?" And a lot of people said, "Well, why didn't you talk about it?" And I said, "Because I thought it was gonna be it." I thought, I love him, so why wouldn't I love his children?
And you don't
And
know what you don't know, do you? You don't know.
no.
It's a whole different landscape being a
Yeah.
single parent.
And people say, "Oh, you know what you're getting into, he's got kids," but actually it is completely different. It is not like having your own children. They go somewhere else for some part of the week. They have a different parent parenting them, different values. So when they come to your house, they're not your children. They don't have the same values of your children. They're not used to the same rules as your children. And do you step in? Do you not? Do you let dad do it? But dad's doing it differently than you do it in your house. And you just don't know where that balance lies. And especially in the first couple of years, it can just be really stressful. You've got pressures from all different angles and your own. I put a lot of pressure on myself in the first and second year. I wanted them to like me. I wanted them to go home really happy, having had a really good time. And I thought that was my role. I make them happy so they want to come and see their dad. And I put so much pressure on myself that by the end of year 2, I was just completely burnt out, and I didn't know how to fix it because I didn't feel like anybody got it. And it's really nice to talk to you and actually hear your side of the story because it's really nice to hear someone go, "Yeah, I had all those feelings. Yeah, I thought all those thoughts." And I think that's one great thing about my safe space online is people come in and they say, "Oh my goodness, I didn't think anybody felt that way," or "I didn't realize other people were going through similar." And it's not even, your families don't have to look alike to have similar threads going through it and similar challenges. And I think that is why I love the community so much, because you can find a safe space and realize you're not on your own.
Yeah, because I think, again, it's very silent, isn't it? We're not allowed to say, "I'm finding this hard." Because what do you mean you're finding it hard? It's a bit like biological parents seemingly aren't allowed to say, "I'm finding this hard," because it's the most natural thing in the world, right?
Yeah,
No. For some
it's it,
people,
it's
it
just
really
not.
isn't. And I think with blended families, the complexities that we're talking about. Now, I've worked with people who are nailing it, absolutely nailing it. And in my experience from the therapeutic work I've done, the only reason that they're nailing it is because the communication is really good. The relationship is still very good between the exes, and they are on the same page when it comes large. They're certainly in the same book. Not always on the same page, but they're certainly on the same in the same book.
Love that.
And that makes such a difference. And my goodness, it makes all the difference to how the child comes through this. They're more accepting of new partners coming in because they know that their parents are together, even though they're physically apart.
Yeah.
And it's so lovely to see. So I do know that people do have successes, but that comes from
Mm.
the adults.
Yeah.
That comes from the adults prioritizing the child's overall well-being. And unfortunately, when separation gets involved, animosity often gets kicked up, and it's incredible how people shift and change after a separation.
Yeah.
It's almost like they turn, it's overnight.
Yeah.
You don't recognize that person anymore.
I think during a breakup, obviously emotions are so heightened. I think you naturally focus on how you feel and how you've been affected by the breakup. And when you break up, you expect all lines to be cut, all lines to be drawn. And actually, in a blended family, often that can't be the case for whatever reason. The children need their parents, and I think we forget because of our heightened emotions that you can be a bad couple, you can be in a bad relationship, and when you break up, you can still be really great parents. And often we focus on the hurt and the pain and the want to just cancel everything out of that life of our person, that, they're not our person anymore. They're not nothing to do with us. Actually, we're severing too many ties, and we need to strip it back and go, okay, we cannot be a couple anymore. We can sever those ties. But what we need to do is find out how to be a parenting team. We can still be on the same team, even if we're not in a couple. And it's really hard to do when we're at our most highest emotionally. It is hard to strip it back, get into wise mind, and find the connections for our children.
You say it's really hard, and in many ways, I agree with you. And I think what happens is we go into a grief cycle
Yeah,
when a relationship breaks down, especially for the person that didn't see it coming. It's a huge shock, and we go into a grief cycle. But what we're actually talking about here is we go inwards.
yeah,
We go into our own pain, and we ruminate over that pain, and we go. And it's a really natural cycle to go through. But what we have to remember is, yes, it's tough. But what's tougher is parenting with somebody that you have no relationship with. Yeah. So this is the thing is, I think if something, if somebody were listening to this podcast today and they know it's coming, let's just say there's the writing's on the wall, the relationship is potentially going to separate. The one thing that I would like to say is look after yourself, look after that grief.
yeah.
Whatever you do, try and maintain that relationship with your ex-partner, regardless of what they've done to you.
Mm,
So actually, this isn't about us as adults anymore. This is about the children. Would you
yeah.
agree with that?
Definitely. And I think one of the things is learning to separate us as a couple and us as a family, because it is a completely different thing when you separate. Is actually you can still have those family ties, that family parent team for the good of the children. And as you said, whatever's happened between the two of you is between the two of you, and it doesn't have to drag into the children. A lot of the times you hear in mum's net pages and stuff, you hear, well, if he's done that, then he's broken the family and he's hurt the children. Okay, we need to stop. We need to press pause and we need to go, he did that to me. I'm not going to let that affect the children. And the way you don't let it affect the children is by going, that's two separate things.
Yeah.
I can protect my children by going, he did that to me and only me. I'm
Yeah.
going to take that. I'm going to grieve over here. And then over here, I'm going to be a good parent. He's going to be a good parent. We're going to focus on our parenting team. And it can be two separate things. It takes a lot to think that through and to focus on that. And like you said, you have to really look after your grief. You have to really look after yourself. But it is possible. And like you said, as long as you can get to that emotional state, it can be brilliant for the children. And they can have a really great parenting team that maybe you didn't have when you were together. But
Yeah.
actually, I've seen couples, terrible, terrible parenting. Both of them, really bad. As soon as they come together as co-parents, they were like different people. They were suddenly showing up for their children because they had to, because half the time they were with them. So dad, who would normally leave mom to it, is suddenly like, yeah, I'm going to show up for my kids. I'm going to cook for them. I'm going to play with them because I have to.
Mm.
And then mom's like, oh my goodness, he's showing up. That's great. And she was doing that too. And actually, this child got the best of two really great worlds.
Yeah.
And it's really heartwarming to see people be able to get to that point.
Yeah. It's not easy though, is it? It's not
No.
easy when there's animosity and frustration and often years of resentment that can build. And one of the things that I say to my clients is that when a marriage breaks down or a relationship breaks down, especially when there's children involved, I think there's two losses. There's the loss of the relationship and there's the loss of the family. And personally, I grieve the loss of my family more than I did the loss
Yeah.
of the person. And I think a lot of people experience that. They don't actually miss the person, but that let's face it, none of us go into a relationship with children with a view that we're going to separate. The plan is
No.
we're going to live our lives together forever, and we're going to see our grandchildren as a couple, and all of that jazz.
Yeah.
That's not what we set out to do. So the loss of that family unit can be really, really tough, I think, for most people. And if they separate it out, because many people separate for marriages and go, well, I don't even like him, but then I feel so sad or so angry or whatever. And it's actually, well, okay, let's separate it. Is it him or is it that you
You
feel,
feel cheated. You feel cheated of that life that
yeah,
you were building.
what
And
you signed up for?
yeah. And I think that's half the pain is you feel, I don't like him, he's doing something terrible, but your grief is because you feel cheated. You feel like you've lost that
Yeah.
whole family network. You never wanted to put your children in this position. No, we know how to be couples and to be parents to our children. But actually, fundamentally, we don't know how to do a breakup and then still parent our children together.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the loss comes from, but how do I do this now? I've got to share my time. I've got to ask someone that I don't like and respect anymore. And it's really hard to find that calmness in yourself to go, but I need to be a parent.
Yeah.
And that's fundamentally what it is focusing on your child and
Yeah.
saying, right, we need to just grow together as a family, but separately as a pair.
And this is great if both parties are up for that. But so often that's not the case.
No.
So often we've got one that's very invested and the other that maybe isn't so invested. So in your experience, what do you think to that? So let's just say mum, the children are with mum. Dad is there, but dad is um he's consistent, but he's not really parenting. They're more his mate. They become his mate.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of women would probably say that this can happen,
Yeah,
and you
absolutely.
don't necessarily agree with what he's doing, the way he's being with them. That can be really tough. So we're talking about completely different books and pages now.
Yeah.
So, in your experience, what would you say is the advice around how to navigate that?
So we call it Disney dad syndrome. It is being a friend. It is being, those bestie moments because a lot of it comes down to guilt. It is guilty dad syndrome. It is, I can't be there all the time. So I don't want to punish you. I don't want to set boundaries. I want you to have fun while you're with me. So you keep coming back because I miss you. And it's a really hard thing to navigate for a dad. But as a stepmom witnessing it, who's, it can feel like they don't care about me because how can they care about me if they're not on board with my rules, if they're not setting boundaries with those children, especially if you've got children in the same house.
So, sorry, who doesn't care about you, the partner or the
The
children?
partner,
Partner, right? Yeah.
because especially in my experience, I had two children I was raising a certain way, and then suddenly I've got four extra children that are raised in a completely different way, but they're in my house now with my partner. It's like, okay, we want to decide on rules, but trying to get on the same page as someone that's doing it completely differently with the added guilt of, oh, well, don't make them wash up. They're only here 2 days a week. But my children, they don't get that choice. They're here all the time. So they have to. They can't see people come in and then not wash up. So there's two ways to kind of go about it. And when I coach clients, I say, look, it depends on whether you can get your partner on board. The first thing is communication. It is looking at how you talk to your partner so that you don't get him on a defensive. You don't want to be picking holes in his parenting or the ex's parenting because it's not going to help. What you need to do is point out what the children will gain. So, it would be great if they learnt to be self sufficient. How could we teach them that together while they're here? Thinking of it in terms of values and beliefs rather than in terms of behavior can really help someone shift their mindset from, I don't want to, oh, actually, I really want my kids to learn that. How can we do that together? And I think that can be quite a powerful thing, is tapping into what values and beliefs does your partner have about the world and you have that you want those children to see, to gain, to experience. If you come across a dad that is completely, no, I'm going to parent my way, they're my children. I know we're in the house together, but I'll just deal with them. That's when, as a stepmom, you have to learn to set boundaries. And it can be really hard because you feel like the bad guy when you set boundaries. I know a lot of people say setting boundaries is so difficult. And it is, it feels really unnatural at the beginning. But when we set boundaries, we are saying, I love you and I want you in my life, but I need you to be in my life in a certain way. That's how you behave to me, how I will accept you in my life. And actually, it's a really powerful thing to say, I'm worth this because I matter and you matter in my life. We wouldn't go into school and not have rules. We have rules about how we can address a teacher, how you can address your doctor when you go in, you're polite to them. So we set boundaries with that. And it is really difficult to set a boundary. I'm sure you've had it where you've had to set boundaries and then you feel guilty and like, oh, am I doing the right thing? And you have to deal with that self-doubt. But actually setting boundaries can be a really good way of stepping back from the parenting and going, okay, he will parent his children that way, but my boundaries are, I still need this.
Mm. Yeah, I think you're right, and I think the communication between you and your partner is absolutely crucial, and that can take a very long time. Bearing in mind the landscape of raising children changes all of the time.
Yeah.
In those first few years, I mean, I would say things really didn't calm down in my household for probably about 5 years because the kids were all going through those varying stages of their lives. We had
Different.
between us, we had so a 14-year-old, two 11-year-olds, and a 7 or 8-year-old. They were at varying different stages of their lives. So it was a really tricky process. But one of the things that I learned, probably not early enough, I have to say, my husband needed support. Now, although he was doing things his way and I didn't necessarily always agree or approve of those ways, what I did learn was that this was a challenging time. So we'll go back to the person that you were just talking about, that guy who wants to be a Disney dad. And sometimes as stepmoms, we just have to support them in that from a place they just want a relationship with their child. We might not agree in the way that they want that relationship, but if we can support our partners, then they're going to be better equipped to do it. Because otherwise, they're between a rock and a hard place. They
Yeah.
may,
You've got in them in the middle.
you're absolutely, but by being a Disney dad, I'm upsetting my partner. Whereas if I'm not a Disney dad, I'm going to upset my kids. They can't win, can they? So
No.
you have to be respectful of choices, I think.
And it comes from a place of love. It never comes from a place of wanting to hurt you. And I feel sometimes we do take it really personally, but it is never about us. It's about them and their bond and love for their children and missing them and wanting to see them and just wanting that whole family. It's their grief as well. And we have to show up with love for our partners because we have to remember it isn't about us. It is just about them and their feelings. And we still love them. They're still those people that we fell in love with. And even when they're not doing something that we agree with, we have to still love them, support them, and say, I don't agree with it, but I've got your back
Mm.
because that's what the partnership is about.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so, so important because we all know that when we have children, it can really challenge our relationships. You mentioned it earlier about, you know, I explained to the families that I work with and clients that when two people come together, they have these particular parenting styles, usually different ones, but actually they've come from two other people. So we're talking about the influence of four different parenting styles. You put another two parents into the mix, you've got so many complexities there that none of us have the power to iron out.
No,
What we do have the power to do is make changes within ourselves. And we've spoken a little bit about modeling our expectations, modeling how we behave and what we want from the other person as well, whether that be the children, whether that be our partners. And I'm with you. I think if we want something from our partners, we have to model it. This teaching is way more powerful than telling. And
yeah,
adults are really good picking things up. They do pick up
absolutely.
what the expectations are. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think modeling is crucial to
Mm,
stepmoms because often, you hear about, I'm going to step back from step parenting and you forget that actually your behavior is still being modeled out to those children. And modeling for children is so powerful. Even if you're not getting the reaction you want back, keep modeling that good behavior, showing up as your authentic self and saying, but this is who I am. And don't be afraid to say, but this is who I am. For me, huge thing, manners with children. And I used to get really upset and hurt when I didn't hear a thank you after I served dinner. My kids will always thank me if I serve them dinner or once they've eaten. And I used to take it as a big attack. And I'd be like, I want to, if somebody gets me a drink, I'm going to say thank you because that's who I am and manners mean a lot to me. And I started finding myself just grabbing it and drinking and thinking, well, if you're not going to say thank you to me, why am I saying thank you back? Because
mm,
that's up to your dad to teach you manners. I can't teach you. But actually, what I can do is have a big influence and go, I am me and manners are important. And I'm going to show you that by presenting you my manners.
mm.
And actually, if you keep being consistent and showing that behavior, I've had my stepchildren over recently, all of them. Thank you very much. Give me a hug. Dinner was great. And I thought, wow.
Yeah.
And and it felt so good, but
Mm,
it felt so good that I'd showed up with that
yeah.
authenticity as me. I don't want to change who I am. And I think sometimes as stepmoms, we feel ourselves losing who we are.
Yeah.
And I always say, if something is valuable to you, don't let a bad situation change that because
No.
you have control over who you are. And if you like who you are, keep going. Doesn't matter if someone else isn't like that. You can show them really good manners. You can show them really good skills by just showing them.
Mm,
And it's amazing how powerful modeling can be, just modeling good behavior
yeah.
and good communication, even. It helps them learn, it helps them grow, and they will model that back eventually. And then you'll have two of you that can stay on topic, that can work in the moment. I've done a mindfulness course recently, and my partner was completely like against it. And I did some the other day. I was having a bad day and I did some. And she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just being mindful for just a minute, bringing it back, being right present right now." And then I caught him doing something. And I said, "What are you doing?" The other day. And he said, "I've just had a busy day at work. I'm just being mindful." And I was like, and like, it was just, he just walked in the door, took two deep breaths and touched something. And I said, "I know what that is. I spent." And I was really pleased because I said, "Well, did it work?" And he said, "Yeah, he really did." He said, "I've never thought of that." And I was like, that's a goal, that is. And it was nice to see. I didn't try and change him. I just said, "Look, I'm doing this for me. 1 second. Look, this is what I'm doing. I'll explain it, but you don't have to copy it if you don't want to." To see him then try it and tell me actually that was really powerful for me. I was like, that's positive modeling, right?
And we really underestimate how much our partners pick up from us. And it's not that they're changing for us, it's because that would be the telling then of you should do this and you
Yeah.
should do that. When I met my husband, he was a beer drinking, burger eating human. I'd never run for a bus, I don't think. But I was quite into exercise and it didn't bother me that he didn't exercise. That's fine. I quite like beer as well. But now, many years later, he's running a marathon next month.
Wow.
Right. Neither of us drink anymore. But I'm not suggesting that he's a runner now because I was a runner.
No.
And something tells me,
You grow together.
yeah, yes, absolutely. The fact that he runs further than me now is a little bit annoying, but it's okay. But
I love that.
going back to what we were saying about I think one of the conversations that we're having here around couples, being a parent is really tough. Whether you're your biological parents or you're co-parenting and you're separated, and none of us, there is not a one size fits all
Oh, no.
because there are so many different dynamics that go on in blended families. I think being in a blended family myself, I think giving up some of the control is really important because when we're in a biological family, we certainly in my experience, I was the one that pretty much raised the kids. He was around for sure, and he was a present dad. But when I wasn't around, actually, he became a very different dad.
Yeah.
And I remember one of it sticks in my mind. I remember where I was desperate for them to have a good relationship because I came from a blended family. So I definitely didn't want my children to have what I'd experienced. So I was desperately trying to nurture this relationship through the pain, through all of the all of that went with it. And I got to a point where actually me trying to control their relationship actually created more conflict. And I had to step back. And as much as I was doing that in the interest of my children, because I
Yeah.
wanted them to have a good relationship with their dad, that it wasn't my job to nurture their relationship. That was his job. That has become his job. And that was a light bulb moment for me. And as soon as I gave up the control of that or the responsibility of that, because it felt like it was a responsibility,
Yeah.
everything changed for me. All of a sudden, I focused on my relationship with my children rather than our relationship with the children.
Yeah. I think it's really powerful that you you saw that before it became it worked into
It,
something it shouldn't have
it
been.
took 3 months. I mean, it took 3 months from when we separated, and I remember it clearly. It was just like it went boom in my head. I thought, this is me getting into conflict with him about his relationship with the children is actually not modeling about anything positive to the children about my relationship with them.
No.
And my relationship with them was my priority.
And I bet it improved once you took that pressure off
100%.
yourself.
100%.
Yeah. And I think it's really difficult, especially as primary caregivers, if we're the ones that have done everything for what feels like a really long time, when you split and suddenly you don't have to do all that anymore,
Yeah.
you worry about, well, can that person do it because they didn't before? And actually, you have to allow them the space
Mm.
to take that role on. And, some of it is they didn't need to when you were around. And some of it is they wanted to, but they didn't want to step on your toes. Now you're apart. They have to step up. That's what they you know, are biologically going to do because they are those dads.
Or
And
not.
sometimes, or not, sometimes they fail, and sometimes they find a partner, and the partner takes up that role. And I think also that can be quite hard to take that somebody else is in that role that you had for such a long time. So as a biological mom, it's like, but if he's not going to do it, I should do it because I'm the mum. But actually, if the stepmom is there able to support him to gain that relationship, whatever that looks like in their home, it can only be positive if she is allowing that relationship to continue. So it is a really hard thing to navigate, that loss of control, but it can really blossom like for you.
Mm.
you focused on your children and suddenly it improved your relationship with them. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in the other person, we do lose our own bonds and actually bring it back to our house. I can do all of this in this house and we can have a really good relationship. And then his relationship, whatever that might look like, that's on him to grow.
Absolutely. And again, one of the things I hear quite a lot is, and I think this is really normal, and I think we all fear it. When you're not part of a blended family or you're not a step parent, you see it from perceived eyes. Lots of people will talk about, but I don't want somebody else to replace me. So I don't want another woman to replace me, or I don't want another man to replace me. Let me tell you, anybody that's listening to this, you will never be replaced. And I have to say, I actually welcomed my ex-husband's partner because she was great with my kids in many, many ways. And I knew that they were safe there at some level, that I had a confidence that they were going to be okay there. Whereas when he was on his own, it was flying by the seat of his pants a little bit more. And I mean that in the most respectful way, but he didn't have all the tools and the skills that
Yeah.
that certainly she brought into their lives, and I welcomed that. I don't think we should give airtime to fearing that somebody else is going to be a better mum to our children than us. They only have one mum. I think it's just remembering that, your children are your children, and that will always be the case. And yes, if they have a great relationship with their stepmom and their stepdad, in my mind, that's a winner. That's a
Brilliant.
complete winner. They've then got four parents that absolutely think they're amazing, and they're there to support them in really different ways. You
So
know,
much love.
yeah, but I suspect you can meet different needs in your stepchildren than their mum can. That
Yeah.
does that just means different, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah, it's great. So these kids have then got all of these adults around them that really care for them, and
Yeah. And you
it's
bring something different.
mm,
You bring something different to the table, which I think is great. And I think going back to what you're saying about, feeling that fear, most stepmoms and stepdads do not want to they don't want to be the main one. They don't want that. That's not, they are just trying to find their place.
yeah.
And as a stepmom, it's really scary trying to find where I fit into this family. What could my role be? What can I bring to these children? And sometimes that can be perceived as overstepping or, wanting to be another parent. And often it isn't that case. The majority of stepmoms and dads just want to be part of it. They want to be part in this family. They don't know how their role is going to fit in. But as you say, we all come from different backgrounds. We've all got different values. We've all got different life skills that we love. I love cooking. My partner likes cooking more now. But when my stepkids come here, I'm like, come on, guys, let's cook because I'm like, that's something I can give to them that perhaps they don't get from their other two parents. Or, I'm really arty. I love being creative. So, for Mother's Day, we used to make things because I really liked being that creative parent. And I think it's really cool that you can eventually have potentially four parents that are bringing something special, something different. Those children get so much more love. They get so much more avenues open that perhaps they wouldn't have seen before. And I think there can be something very special when you get that balance right for those children to live that extra that they might have missed out on, you know?
But going back to what we were saying earlier, and in an ideal world, that would be amazing if all four parents were on the same page of that. But they're not. The
Yeah.
reality, they're not. And the only person we really have control over is ourselves. And as you said, you were saying to me earlier about you encourage parents to explore their values and their beliefs and how they align with the children and what you can tap into, even if it doesn't look exactly the same.
Absolutely. Yeah, when we talk about bonding, we often think, well, those children are so different to us. They're not my kind of people. But actually the underlying beliefs and values, if you can find an alignment you will then be able to find something that you can grasp. I mean, even if you're putting yourself out there, I'm not a sporty person, but I love rules and stuff. So I'll happily sit down and say, right, teach me the rules. And just to listen to them passionately talk about something, I'm like, it's not my thing. I'm not a sport person. I'm not going out and playing football. But if you want to explain the rules to me so we can cheer on this team together, let's do that. And then how about you come and help me make the afternoon snacks? And then look, the rules are on paper. This ingredients list, that's our set of rules for this. And it's just finding that thread, that value, that belief that can connect you. It doesn't always look similar, and you might have to try some things, but when you find that connection, that connecting value, that connecting belief, you can then start to find new ways to connect with that child, to build that bond.
Now, I mean, when you say that, that sounds really simple.
It's not
Actually, no, trying to find out what a child's values and beliefs are can be really, really difficult. But what struck me by what you just said, and I wonder if this sort of aligns with it really. I'm again a big advocate for meeting children at where they are. So very often as parents, we're like, oh God, I hate their music. Have you heard it? It's just awful.
yeah,
Or we don't understand Fortnite or Minecraft or and one of the things I say to the families I work with is get involved, find out, get curious, ask them.
ask the questions, yeah.
Ask them, what is it about this music that you really like? Tell me what you think, or this game, or teach me this game. I think when we lean into children and connect with them on a level that they understand, it comes back to that modeling piece you spoke about earlier. Just that, then they start to get curious about what we do and why we like cooking, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. They might not like it. It's okay, but they start to get curious.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think asking questions is so important, even if you know the answer. You
Yeah.
know, my 4-year-old comes home and says, I've been talking about space. And I'm like, okay, tell me what you've learned. And I know about space. I know about the planets. I know what a 4-year-old knows. You know, there is no value added in this, but she loves to tell me and she gets so excited and I get so excited. And then there's that bond. There's
Mhm.
that, you just know that powerful love is there.
Yeah.
And it feels like it should be harder for the stepchildren, and often it is. But when you lean into them and say, look, I'm here, I'm present, let's go, they often will lean back in and go, okay, let's do something.
Yeah. And they learn where you fit in their life as well, I think. And it may not be you tucking them into bed at night and reading them that bedtime story because that's mum or dad or whoever. But actually when they need some advice maybe, or they know you're the level-headed one. You're not the one that's gonna kick off because their biological parents going, "No, don't do it." So yeah, I think being a step parent can be very, very challenging, but I think there are some real pieces of gold in there for
Absolutely.
children and for the step parent to be able because I do think often we are that little bit more emotionally removed. I'm just interested in what your families talk about because again, this is a bit of a, "Well, we don't talk about that." But we see it. We see it all the time where women don't see this so much with men, but women do ask the question of or question themselves because they're like, but I don't feel about my stepchildren the way I feel about my children. Does that make me a bad stepmom? I know. I know. I'm going to leave that one to you. You could answer that one.
Oh, do you know what I say? I really feel this. And there's a lot of pressure of, you should love your stepchildren. It's a different biological attachment. Let's just start at the biology. It's a different biological attachment, and it comes from a very different place. We love our partners. Do we automatically love our stepchildren? No. Would it be great if we did? Yes, but we don't. Unfortunately, it's just not an automatic connection, especially when you are such different people. You've been raised very differently. Can you learn to love your children? Absolutely. But the thing I always say is, and I've said this to many clients, and not everybody is receptive, but I do think it helps. When you're wondering how to behave, how to react, ask yourself, if you loved that child, how would you behave? How would you react? Because love can change so much, even if fake it till you make it. If you project that love, if you project that into your behaviors, it will massively alter how you are reacting, how you are behaving. And it can have such a big impact on those children. And you don't have to completely say, well, I love them like I love my biological children. It is a different type of love, but perhaps learning that it's okay to have a different type of love is perfect. Like, it's okay to love them differently.
That's really interesting, I think, when we talk about love. And I'm just going to put this out there. I think many biological parents could probably say this, that when we have children, there is I'm a pretty calm person, but hurt my kids. There's a thing in me that just switches, it's like a level, isn't there? Yeah, I think it's really interesting, isn't it? There's an in, there's an internal primal response to that on a primal level, on a neurological level, if we think about it. And I wonder if this does explain the difference in the way in which we love our biological children to our stepchildren. And I am generalizing, but I do recognize this isn't for the case for everybody. But if you think about it, our job is to keep our children alive. That is our primal role, is to keep them alive. So I'm a I'm a big believer that we love our, not everybody again, but the root of unconditional love is from parent to child. I don't think there is unconditional love in any other arena. People might talk about it, but in every other arena, I actually think that there should be conditions to love. Yeah, because otherwise we're simply saying you can do whatever you like and I'll still love you. But I think with children, because there's that primal desire to keep them safe and keep them close at some level, there is that unconditional love from parent to child. Whereas if we think about it, we haven't got the primal nature with our stepchildren. We haven't birthed them. They have people that have that primal nature. So I wonder if that's partly to do with this difference in love, but yet there's so much pressure that we should love our stepchildren in the same way that we do our biological. And I would question whether that's even possible. I don't know.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, I suspect that, if they haven't got primal mum, biological mum around, or whatever that it happens to be, then they fully adopt that. So that's why I'm trying not to generalize too much. But if we're talking about the traditional, stepchildren come every other weekend, that sort of thing, I
Yeah.
suspect that would be why that love would feel quite different. Would you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And as you say, not to generalize, but I think when we make a choice to put a child in our life, that's when that bonding grows, that building of love grows. Whereas with stepchildren, we don't make that choice. That choice has been made by two other people to bring that life into the world. Yes, we make a choice to accept it by loving the partner, but that's a completely different route to accepting that child into our life. And so, as you say, we don't get that foundation, that connection at a early stage of I'm welcoming this child into my life. This child is my child. I think it's very different to say, this is my child. I birthed it, I adopted it, to this is somebody else's child who I'm welcoming into my life. That's a
Mhm.
different avenue. So I feel like you're right in saying that perhaps the love isn't the same. You can still grow to love your stepchildren, but it is a different biological response, a different primal feeling
Yeah.
for those children. They have parents to protect them, to take that responsibility. Whereas, my biologicals, it's me.
Yeah, and I think the reason I wanted to sort of bring that up is because I do think there's a lot of stepmom guilt around that they feel they should, or even their partners feel like they should love their children the same way that they love their own biological children. And I think it's trying to dispel that a little bit and say it's okay to love them differently. But
Absolutely.
I actually think it is a primal thing. So, we can't go against evolution essentially. But yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, one of the things that in my blended family, oh my God, if my stepchildren needed me, I would be there. I would be right beside their dad
Absolutely.
and I would be 100% wherever they needed us to be. Yet, from day to day, they don't need us.
Yeah.
They're living their life, doing their thing, living their best life. But it, I would still get that sense of, "Ooh," if they're in trouble or they needed something, I would still get that flip of the stomach of, I need to help them. And I think when we've got that, that's the love, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's like I almost akin it to like the second stage of backup. Like,
Yeah.
hurt the child, dad's there. Hurt them again, I'm there. Like, I will back the dad up. I am here. Second form of defense almost. And I
Yeah.
think that's when you know that you've got that. And whether it comes from a love of a child or a love of a family, it might be different, but
Mm,
that's okay. And I think that's where we take the guilt away from ourselves by saying it's okay.
yeah.
It's okay to love them this way. It's okay to love my family as a unit. It's different, but it's love, and there's power in that.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, children need love. They need to know
Abs-
that you've got their back. They need to know that, they're safe, however old they are. I don't think it ever changes. I think we always need to know that our parents have got our back and they've got our best interest in their heart. That's so amazing. Thank you so much. I've got one question for you. So, if there were one piece of advice that you could give for either a stepmom or a blended family, what would that be?
Just the ones. I think the biggest thing is communication. I think above all else, your communication is the most powerful tool in your blended family relationship, in your couple, in your stepmom life, in your bio mom life. Communication, we forget how powerful our words are and how powerful our communication can be. So if you're struggling with one area or another, if we switch our communication, if we change the way we communicate, if we change our techniques, change what it looks like, it can have a massive impact. So
Yeah,
that's that's my one big tip is if there's something that doesn't sit well, something feels off, let's communicate the way we feel with ourselves.
yeah.
It's communication is such a big building block, I feel.
And I would echo that. And just to add to that, I think when two people come together and they both have children, there can be a lot of butting heads around what is the right way to parent either set or both sets of children. I would say also, just to add to what you've just said, just just be open. Be open to difference. It doesn't mean that you have to change everything about how you parent your children, but be respectful and open, because often judgment can get in the way and defense can get in the way. And actually, without, you guys have brought this relationship together. You brought this family together. The best way to enable this family to thrive is to be able to communicate openly, which just echoes what you've just said.
Love that.
Thank you so, so much for joining me. Oh, I've loved this conversation. It's been amazing.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're so, so welcome.